Hi everybody, it's Tom from Vehicle Visionary. Today we're back at Holmes Honda and we're going to do a comparison between the 2023 version of the Honda Accord with the LX trim level on the left and the Touring, which is going to be the hybrid version on the right. And right off the bat, let's talk about base price for each model. If you go with the non-hybrid, you're looking at $27,295 as the base price. If you go with the hybrid version, you will be looking at $31,895 as the base price. Obviously, those prices can rise depending on options and features added to the vehicle and trim level as well. So we're going to take a look at some of the similarities and some of the differences between these two models depending on your situation. If you want the non-hybrid version, obviously the LX is one of your choices. But if you like the hybrid version, that's a good thing because it does offer the electrified capabilities with the peace of mind of knowing that it doesn't matter what charge capacity you have, because you're always going to have that gas burning engine under the hood that works with the electric motor to make everything happen. But if you run out of charge capacity to be in EV mode, you just go back into gas mode and you can keep driving down the road or sitting in traffic, whatever the situation is. So let's dive in to exactly what we have as far as similarities and differences. At first glance, there's really not much of a difference on the front end, but when we get a little bit closer and take a look at some things, there are some obvious differences. One of those being the differences in the air curtain. You're going to notice differences in coloration. The design is the same, but over here on the LX trim level, we're going to have the matte black finish compared to what we have over on the Touring hybrid model. As far as your headlight design goes, those are basically going to be the same. And another big difference you'll notice here, becomes more obvious the closer we look, is going to be the design of the side view mirrors. You'll notice that on the LX trim level, the mirror is a little smaller, at least a little bit more narrow, we'll say. We have a little bit more width on the side view mirror on the Touring trim level, and you also have the turn signal indicator built in on that model. Another obvious difference that you can see obviously from this vantage point is the sunroof or the lack of a sunroof, and depending on your particular preference, well, that may determine whether you do or don't want that sunroof. I know a lot of people were hoping for a panoramic sunroof with the higher trim levels for the Accords for the 2023 model year. Tell me what your thoughts are. Do you like the conventional size panoramic sunroof, or would you rather just not have one at all? As far as the overall taillight design goes, obviously there are significant changes, but you won't see any differences between the two models. But the changes you will see in overall design is the fact that gone is the crab claw or stapler look. A lot of people refer to it more as looking like a stapler on the 10th generation than anything else. And then we'll also notice the differences on the trim on the lower portion down there on the bumper. We're going to have matte black on the LX and gloss black on the hybrid Touring. And one thing you'll notice that there's going to be an absence of compared to the Touring. You see all of the sensors right here that you don't see over here on the LX. Obviously that's going to reduce the price quite a bit, so depending on your situation, well, that will determine what you want to do. Or if you're just saying to yourself, you know, I really don't want to spend that much money, but I'd still like to have a 2023 Accord. One thing that is not different here, and this is something that separates these two models out from a lot of hybrid vehicles on the market today, is the fact that whether you go with the LX or you go with the Touring, the cargo capacity numbers are going to be the same at 16.7 cubic feet. Another area where you will find similarities and differences all in the same place will be the fact that, number one, you cannot get any Accord in anything other than front-wheel drive. But the tire sizes on these two models are going to be different from one another. We're going to have 225 on the width, quite a bit of meat on the ground here, and a 50 series sidewall wrapped around the 17-inch wheel. And how about differences in tire size between the two? Here on the Touring trim level, we're going to have the 235 on the width with the 40 series sidewall, and that will be wrapped around the 19-inch wheel. Out of these two models, tell me which wheel design you like the most. When it comes to what's under the hood of each model, the horsepower numbers are fairly close to each other, but the torque numbers are quite different. And you will also find a difference in gas tank size. Here on the LX, we have the 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It makes 192 horsepower and 192 pounds-feet of torque. It's mated to a continuously variable transmission. And how about those all-important MPGs? Obviously, they're good numbers on each vehicle, but let's see what the differences are. 29 city, 37 highway, 32 combined, and 3.1 gallons of gas is what Honda says you should use per every 100 miles you drive. Keep this in mind. This model, the LX, has a 14.8 gallon gas tank. And since I already talked about the advantages of the hybrid powertrain over full EV, we're not going to rehash that, but you do have that combination of the 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder and the electric motor to make things work here. 204 horsepower, 247 pounds-feet of torque, and in this particular case, it's mated to an e-CVT. By the way, here's a good place to take advantage of these manually folding side view mirrors. What about MPGs? Keep in mind, the numbers are going to be flip-flopped here because you're going to use the gas motor more out on the highway than you are on the city. So when you're in the city, you're more likely to use the hybrid mode or EV mode than you are out on the highway. So city is going to be 46 miles per gallon, 41 miles per gallon out on the highway, 44 combined, and 2.3 gallons of gas is what Honda says you should use per every 100 miles you drive. Now remember how the LX over here has a 14.8 gallon gas tank? Here on the hybrid Touring, the gas tank size is 12.8 gallons. And while we already went over the features and the functionality of these power door mirrors, there is one more thing I need to mention. The fact that on the LX, you have power adjustable, but they are not heated. Over here on the hybrid Touring, they're power adjustable and they're also heated. Taking a look in through the driver's side rear door into the LX model, we'll take a look at what we have with a reasonable size door bin for this size of vehicle. And a lot of the time, I know we tend to push down on the armrest materials right there and say whether it's soft or not, but you know what? You really don't know until you put your arm up there. It actually does feel a lot more soft when you use the armrest test, as opposed to the poke test, almost like you're testing for the doneness of a steak. You will not find any kind of USB connectivity back here or air conditioning vents, and I don't know that that's as big of a deal in an interior of this size. I think it will be okay. You do have the singular rear seat pocket, or what have often been known as map pockets, but I don't think anyone is going to be putting a map in there, so we'll stick to rear seat pocket as far as the name goes. And then the fold down armrest with the cup holders built in. And as I mentioned earlier, but you can see it now from the inside, no sunroof here. For some people, that's a good thing. If you want a little bit more of an upscale look, the hybrid Touring offers that as far as options for interior color goes. And you will find that the armrest actually does feel a lot more soft if you use the poke test. It feels more like a, well, almost well-done steak, medium well, compared to well done, we'll say that. But the armrest test still reveals the same, nice and soft. And you can see the door bin there as well. And as we hop inside, yes, we're still going to have that singular rear seat pocket right there, but we will find the dual air conditioning vents and 2 USB ports. I always wonder why these car makers don't have 3 USB ports in the rear seat area, because, well, obviously you have seating for 3 people back here. There are ways around that with an adapter if you want to go that route for your rear seat passengers, or they want to do it themselves, whatever the case is. And as you can see, you have the same fold down armrest with the cup holders built in, but the obvious difference here is going to be the fact that there is a sunroof for those who prefer such a thing. And if you're wondering about being able to tell the difference between the remotes for each vehicle, well, basically you can't. Hybrid Touring is on the left and the LX is on the right. And as we take a look in through the driver's side door, I don't really need to tell you too much about what's here. I think you know already. You will have a tilt and telescopically adjustable steering wheel. Just drop the lever right there and you can make your adjustments as needed. And we'll hop on inside, and there are going to be some differences found here as far as overall design and the sizes of things such as the infotainment screen. You can see what we have here. When you turn on the headlights, well, you'll know they're on, especially during the day. Obviously at night, well, that's kind of a given, or after dark. But during the day, if you're wondering, well, you can see the illumination or the lack thereof, depending on if they're on or not, on the likeness of your Accord, on the nice digital instrument cluster. A very simple system to use or learn if you've never had one before. And here with the infotainment screen, a very simple system, but you can see what you have here. Everything is easy to use. Now you can use Bluetooth, you can pair that wirelessly, but you will need a USB cable to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto capabilities that this car offers. We do have single zone climate control here. I don't know that that's such a bad thing, but that's what you have. There's a couple more USB options there, and something that I know a lot of you don't like, something you will not find in an Accord for 2023, is going to be a push button shifter. Now you do have some capabilities down here where you will push buttons to do things as far as turning the auto stop start feature off or going in and out of econ mode. And then we'll take a look at what we have here as far as the overall look of our center console. Quite a bit of space down in there that you can take full advantage of. And there is a 12-volt power outlet, which would make it easy to run an adapter for your rear seat passengers to have USB connectivity. And one more thing before we hop into the hybrid touring model. Here is what your multi-view rear view camera looks like on the LX trim level. That flickering effect that you see has to do with the shutter speed of my GoPro, and no matter what I change it to, it still does that in certain lighting situations. So just so you know, that's not an issue with the infotainment screen here on the Accord. Other than differences in the interior color options, for the most part, we're going to see the same things here on the driver's side door panel that we saw on the LX trim level, with one exception. Seat memory. There are two different settings. You also have the same setup as far as the tilt and telescopically adjustable steering wheel, but you do have power seats for the driver and the passenger here. You didn't have power seats on the LX trim level, but for a lot of people, I don't know that that's a big deal necessarily, but boy, there are some differences here as far as everything else goes. Again, we're going to have that same look on the dashboard. You'll notice what appear to be shifter paddles right here. Those actually are not shifter paddles, though. Those adjust how the regenerative braking works, basically. That's using kinetic energy to keep the battery charged for the vehicle. So depending on your situation, you can adjust that up or down if you want to. And our steering wheel mounted controls are pretty much the same, but here's a big difference. On the LX, we had a 7-inch touchscreen. Here we have 12.3, built-in navigation, all of that good stuff. You have wireless capabilities for your phone. You can see what all is here. There is a lot going on. You can even see what's going on with the vehicle with the power flow meter. Quite a bit here, a very nice and modern look. When you go in to make changes to the vehicle, you can see what all is here and how easy that is to use. Pretty much a hunt and peck method style of screen. It may look a little complicated if you've never had this kind of technology before, but to be honest with you, it's not complicated at all. Very easy to learn, very easy to use. And even when we go into vehicle settings, you're still going to see a very nice look with everything. You can go in and make adjustments to your cameras. And speaking of cameras, let's go into reverse and see what we have here. In this case, it's the same thing, but you will notice over there on the right-hand side of the screen, that has to do with those sensors, the parking sensors, and all the safety features that you have on these vehicles with with Honda sensing. Let's not get brain twisted there. That wasn't a tongue twist, that was a brain twist. Yes, it's okay to laugh at me if you want to about that. You will find not only dual zone climate control here, but you will find heated, which we don't need today, but what we do need today, right there, ventilated seats. both power for the driver and the passenger. You will have that same connectivity here in the way of USB, but excuse me, you will also find the addition of wireless charging. We're going to have that same shifter set up here, but we'll have our drive mode selector. You can go into EV mode here, power, parking, brake, and brake hold mode. And speaking of the driving modes, a couple of places where you're going to see what goes on with that. Let me show you the modes and the graphics that come up with those modes when you change into those modes. And this not only takes place here on the screen or the dashboard, I should say, with the driver's interface right there, but also here on the infotainment screen. Very nice graphics depending on what mode you're driving in. Just a little bit of added value from Honda where that is concerned. And we'll take a quick look down here into the center console. Pretty much the same setup of what we saw with the LX trim level that we're looking at as well. So ultimately, that's what we have with these two models. You will find the sunglass holder here and obviously controls for that tilt and sliding sunroof that we have right up here. But let's get out on the road and see what the differences are in how these models drive. And I most certainly don't want to forget, before we get out on the road for our test drives, to mention that yes, there is a head-up display here with the hybrid touring trim level. Okay, we're going to get out for our test drive here in the Accord. And obviously, we're going to start with the lower of the two trim levels that we have today for the video. One thing I do like to try to do when possible is get out on this particular road and give a road noise test. And keep in mind, this is a little overkill, we'll say, because this road is really bad. We're driving at 65 miles per hour, but I'm just going to be quiet and let you listen. And keep in mind, this is a worst case scenario here. So most of the time, what you end up driving with and dealing with isn't going to be this bad. So I'll let you listen. So in my personal opinion, the road noise here is not bad. It's actually quite quiet in here, even though I'm used to driving on this road, so it might sound really bad to most people, but to me it's not that big of a deal. Overall, the Accord is fun to drive no matter what trim level you choose. It handles well, it hugs the road well, has good handling characteristics. It's a solid vehicle for large cities, for big city driving. If you live in cities where there are millions of people and a lot of traffic and whatever the case is, this is a great vehicle because it's nimble, it gets around easily, it handles well. And LX and EX, you're going to have the least amount of technology. For some people, that's a good thing. You're saying to yourself, maybe, I really don't want to have to buy a new vehicle now because there's so much going on, there's so many gadgets and all the screens and driving modes and all that kind of stuff. This is a very easy vehicle to drive. In fact, to learn the technology in. In fact, any Honda trim level is actually very simple. It may look kind of intimidating, especially when it comes to the hybrid touring that we're also featuring in our video today. Don't let that scare you off because it actually is easy to learn no matter what the situation is. Ride quality, good. It's very enjoyable to drive. The seating, once you get it set up correctly for what your desires are to be comfortable, you'll be just fine. And I know there are people out there who actually talk about cloth seats being antiquated and out of date and all that kind of stuff. And whether or not that's true, I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. But this model does come with the cloth seats, still comfortable. I think you'd be in a great position no matter what if this is something you're looking for and you're saying to yourself, I really don't want to get up into the high 30s and beyond in buying a new vehicle right now. The LX or EX trim levels definitely would be something to consider. Okay, we're going to get out on the road, take the same test drive route. We're going to do the exact same thing here with the hybrid touring and just let you listen on the same stretch of road. Don't know that you can really tell much of a difference in the road noise between the two models, but we'll give it a shot anyway. So hopefully that's enough to give you a good idea of the road noise and even wind noise between the two vehicles. Wind noise is basically non-existent. I really don't hear anything. I can definitely hear some road noise, but as I mentioned earlier in the video on the first test drive, this is not a smooth road by any stretch of the imagination. So there are some differences here, and one thing I did want to show you, we talked about the power flow meter earlier. If you just want to bring that up on the screen, you can actually just touch this section right here, and there you go. It tells you what's going on with the vehicle as far as your power flow goes. Pretty easy to figure out. Now, one thing that's interesting, I was talking to somebody earlier about having driven a model identical to this from Shreveport, Louisiana to Dallas, Texas, which is about a 3.5-hour drive, and for a good portion of that to keep up with traffic, they were doing between 80 and 85 miles per hour and still managing 44 miles per gallon. Here's the thing about that on an MPG such as that as your average. If you average 44 miles per gallon, typically you pay the price in a lack of horsepower and a lack of being able to accelerate in a timely manner. Here, that's not the case. This Accord Hybrid gets up and goes with absolutely no problem. 204 horsepower and 247 on the torque definitely gets the job done. It's really surprising at how well this accelerates. I'm going to go ahead and get on down the road here. I don't know if you can see the speedometer, what's going on there. I wasn't even, maybe to 3/4 throttle, so I wasn't even on the floor, and we got to 60 miles per hour in a somewhat quick basis. I didn't bring the draggy with me. I should have, and we could have done a 0 to 60 test. I don't know how important that is to most people as far as those who may be wanting to buy this particular model of the 23 Accord. I will say that while the cloth seating I don't think is a big issue with the other trim levels as far as what's available, here with the leather trimmed seats, these are very comfortable. The seats themselves seem to be a little more comfortable, a little more well bolstered, really hugging my body a little bit better. Just seem like it's a little bit more comfortable as far as the seating goes. The ride quality is pretty much the same, which is good with both models. But as far as this model goes, I definitely have to give the thumbs up and really kind of give the nod to the hybrid version as far as comfort goes, overall comfort with the seating itself. It would be nice to be able to ride in the back seat, but without someone else to drive, well, obviously we can't do that. So it is what it is where that is concerned. And just like I said earlier, technology here, easy to learn, easy to use. It may seem intimidating just because of what you see on the screen. There's a lot there, yes. Is there more than what you would have on LX or EX with that 7-inch screen? Sure, but the advantage is that while it may look more complicated, it really isn't. This is just as easy to learn and use, not a big deal. Both cars are a lot of fun to drive, but I'll tell you what, this hybrid version definitely has a good bit more get up and go than does the 1.5 liter turbocharged turbocharged engine, not naturally aspirated. Boy, did I tongue twist that one up. Good chance for you to laugh if you're in wanting to. Now you can laugh at me and not with me. But anyway, the turbocharged 1.5 liter, it would be fun if we had a place to do it, to be able to get out and actually have a drag race between the two. But we really don't have a place to do that, unfortunately, and we're sure not going to do it on the street. But it would be interesting to see how that would go. I don't know. If we could find a place to do it, we definitely would, but I don't think I'm going to be able to pull that off very easily. If I was going to buy one of the two models as to what we're looking at in today's video, which one would I go with? Definitely the hybrid touring. More fun to drive, more horsepower, more torque. It just seems to be better as far as acceleration goes. For a sporty driving experience, this is definitely the model to buy. I like the screen here, this 12.3-inch screen compared to the 7-inch screen. The technology here is better, but then again, you're going to pay a higher price. So everybody's going to have their desires and maybe limitations on what they can and can't do, or just simply saying, you know what, I just don't want that high of a car note. Tell me what you think down in the comments. What is your personal preference for the 2023 Honda Accord? Would you prefer the hybrid version, or the non-hybrid version? Tell me what your answer is and tell me why you answered the way that you did. I'm always curious to know what your thought process is that basically goes into choosing which vehicle you would purchase. I have to say a special thanks to my friends here at Holmes Honda for loaning me both of these Accords for the day. And a special thanks to each and every one of you for being kind enough to take the time to watch and give me the opportunity to give you a vision for your next vehicle. If you enjoyed this video and would like to learn about other vehicles you may wish to consider purchasing, check out the video that's on the screen right now, and I will see you there.